The church bells rang once, then stopped. On Christmas Eve, bells were never late, never early. They rang every year at exactly 11:45 p.m., calling the faithful to midnight mass. I had lived on this street my entire life. I knew the rhythm of those bells the way you know your own breathing. But that night, the sound cut off mid-note, like someone had grabbed the bell's tongue and forced it still. The silence afterward felt wrong, heavy, as if the air itself was listening. I stood at my window, watching snow fall in thick, slow flakes. The streetlights flickered, bathing the road in weak yellow halos. No cars, no voices, just the soft hiss of snow landing on asphalt. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not outside. Inside the house. Slow, careful, testing the floorboards. I hadn't invited anyone. My parents were gone. The neighbors had left hours ago for family dinners. The house was supposed to be empty except for me and the quiet hum of the heater. The footsteps stopped right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath. Something scratched softly against the wood. 3 slow lines, like fingernails dragging downward. A voice whispered from the other side. "Open it. You're late." I reached for the door handle before I realized something horrifying. The voice sounded exactly like mine. And then the bells rang again. All at once. From inside the house. The house didn't feel empty after that night. It felt occupied. Morning light crept through the curtains in thin, pale lines, touching the walls like it was afraid to linger. I hadn't slept, not even for a minute. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the bells again, ringing from places they shouldn't exist. Inside the walls. Inside my chest. I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, jacket still zipped, as if I might need to run at any moment. The door was untouched. No scratches. No marks. No proof. That was the worst part. If there had been damage, I could have believed in something simple. An intruder, a prank, a nightmare stretched too long. But the house looked innocent. Calm. Almost offended that I would accuse it of anything. The smell of burnt pine still hung in the air. I followed it downstairs. Each step groaned under my weight, the sound too loud in the morning quiet. The living room was exactly as I'd left it the night before. Christmas tree glowing softly in the corner. Ornaments reflecting my tired face in warped fragments. Stockings hung over the fireplace. My name stitched into one of them in red thread. Something crunched under my foot. I froze. Slowly I looked down. Pine needles. Blackened at the tips. Crushed into the carpet like someone had stood there for a long time, watching the stairs. My throat went dry. I backed away, heart hammering, and bumped into the kitchen counter. The clock above the sink blinked 12 o'clock, frozen. It hadn't reset after the outage. I unplugged it. Still, the silence pressed closer. Outside, Cedar Hollow Street looked wrong. Snow lay untouched, smooth as a burial sheet. No footprints. No tire tracks. Curtains in neighboring houses were drawn tight, like eyes refusing to open. I stepped onto the porch. The cold hit me hard, sharp enough to steal my breath. My voice came out thin when I called my neighbor's name. Mr. Lawson. No answer. I walked to the edge of the porch and noticed something that made my stomach turn. Every house on the street had its Christmas lights on. Even the abandoned ones. All glowing steadily. No flicker. No warmth. Just a uniform artificial brightness. As if someone had switched them on at the same time. As if on purpose. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message. I pulled it out with shaking hands. Unknown number. It came inside, didn't it? I typed back without thinking. Me, what came inside? The reply came instantly. Unknown number. The bells. A memory stirred at the back of my mind. Something distant and heavy, like a dream you don't want to remember because you know how it ends. I rubbed my temples, trying to shake it off. Another message arrived. Unknown number. We were told not to ring them. A chill crawled up my spine. Before I could respond, the phone rang. I stared at the screen. No caller ID. I answered. Hello. Breathing. Slow. Close. Then a voice, old, cracked, trembling. "You heard them stop, didn't you?" "Yes," I said. "Who is this?" A pause. "They weren't supposed to stop." The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. The wind picked up, carrying a faint sound with it, a low, distant hum. Metal against metal. Bells. I turned toward the church at the end of the street. Its steeple rose above the houses like a crooked finger pointing at the sky. The doors were closed. The windows dark. But something moved behind the glass. A shadow passed across the stained panels, stretching unnaturally long, as if whatever cast it didn't belong to a human shape. My legs carried me backward before my mind could catch up. I stumbled into my house and slammed the door shut, locking it with shaking hands. The silence returned instantly. Too instantly. I leaned against the door, breathing hard, trying to ground myself. That's when I noticed the sound. Tick, tick, tick. Not the clock. The walls. I followed the sound down the hallway. It grew louder near the spare bedroom, the one my parents always kept locked. The one they said was unsafe, unfinished, better left alone. The door was open. It hadn't been open in years. Inside, the room was empty except for one thing. A small brass bell sat in the center of the floor. Blackened. Warm. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. It rang on its own. Once. And from somewhere deep inside my head, a child's voice whispered, "You promised you'd remember." And that's when I realized something terrifying. I had heard that bell before, a long time ago, and I had spent my entire life trying to forget why. The morning after the bells first stopped, Cedar Hollow felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. And yet, everywhere I went, I felt eyes on me, as though the town itself was awake and watching. The air was heavier than snow could explain, thick with a tension that pressed into my chest like a hand refusing to let go. I tried to leave the house, to step onto the street, but every neighbor I passed seemed hollow. Their faces carried the same pale gray mask, eyes wide and unseeing, staring past me as if I were invisible. When I called a greeting, their lips barely moved. No sound came out, only the impression that they were trying to warn me to scream and had forgotten how. By noon, I began noticing signs in my own house. Small things at first, a door slightly ajar that I was sure I had locked, faint footprints across the rug in the living room, the smell of burnt pine lingering in corners where nothing had burned. The shadows seemed heavier, deeper, stretching across the floor in ways that defied the angle of light. And always a sound, a soft tapping, a faint scrape, the floorboards groaning as though something heavy moved just beneath them. The first real encounter happened when I went to the spare bedroom, the one my parents always kept locked. I had avoided it for years, convinced something about it was wrong. But now curiosity mixed with fear, and I found myself slowly turning the knob. Inside, the room was empty. Yet the brass bell sat in the center of the floor, blackened and warm. As I approached it, a whisper slithered along the walls, my own voice calling my name. I froze, knuckles white against the doorframe, my heartbeat echoing in the silence. The bell vibrated slightly, though there was no wind, no one to touch it. I recoiled, stepping back into the hallway, but the whispering continued. Soft, insistent, familiar. An impossible sound that seemed to crawl under my skin. I left the house and walked down Cedar Hollow Street, hoping fresh air would calm me. The snow crunched beneath my feet, unnaturally loud in the morning quiet. Then I noticed the lights. Every house, even the ones abandoned years ago, glowed warmly, their bulbs flickering in rhythm, like some coordinated pulse. It was unnerving. My stomach tightened. I had walked this street hundreds of times, but this felt like a performance, and I was the only audience. I knocked on the door of the nearest neighbor, old Mr. Lawson, hoping for human contact, some confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. The door opened, but inside was empty. No furniture, no fire, no cat curled on the rug. Only a note pinned to the wall. "You heard them stop, didn't you?" I stumbled back into the snow, breath visible in the freezing air. The message seemed to float in front of me, lingering in the cold, sharp and impossible. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number appeared. They come for those who forget. Fear, pure and consuming, anchored me to the spot. I had to know what was happening. I had to find someone who could explain. That someone was Mrs. Holloway. She was the oldest resident of Cedar Hollow, a relic of the town before it became the pale imitation of itself. I found her house tucked away at the edge of the woods, snow piled high against the walls. The windows were streaked with frost, and the faint glow of candlelight promised warmth, though I was unsure I wanted it. She answered before I knocked. No hello. No invitation. Just a single line, a question laced with accusation. You heard them. I don't understand. I stammered. Heard what? She gestured for me to come closer, her eyes clouded and sharp at the same time. The witness, she said. The bells. You've seen it, haven't you? It comes for those who remember and those who lie. She spoke of a ritual that had been performed decades ago, something to bind a presence beneath the church. The bells themselves were part of it. A presence that fed on fear, on memory, on denial. Every Christmas Eve it tested the town, looking for those who failed, those who remembered when they shouldn't. The more she spoke, the more I felt my sanity unraveling. The house was no longer a refuge. Every shadow seemed to lean closer. Every sound, a tap, a whisper, the soft creak of snow on the roof, was proof of observation. And outside, the church loomed, silent yet alive, its spire cutting into the gray sky like a blade. When I left her house, I felt the first real sense of paranoia grip me. Footsteps followed me down the street. Not ordinary footsteps. Slow, deliberate, almost testing the floorboards, matching the rhythm of my own heartbeat. I turned around, nothing. I picked up my pace, still following. I ran into the church grounds. The doors were closed, the windows dark, but inside I felt movement. A figure, fleeting and shadowed, passed by the stained glass panels. I pressed my hands against the cold glass. My reflection stared back at me, wide-eyed, pale, terrified. But there was something behind it. Something wrong. Inside the church, the pews were lined with figures. Hollow-eyed neighbors, frozen in place, staring ahead with mouths slightly open, whispering silently. The floorboards groaned beneath invisible weight. The candles flickered without wind. And in the center, the bell suspended unnaturally, vibrating as though it had a heartbeat. I felt myself drawn forward, compelled by something both familiar and alien. Flashbacks struck like lightning. Children screaming, a rope pulled too early, a door left unlocked, someone forgotten. Memories that were mine but not mine. A family I didn't know, Christmases I didn't live, warnings I hadn't heeded. The whispers grew louder, and my own voice joined them. Remember. Remember. Each step closer to the altar, the reality around me warped. The walls stretched, the pews shifted, the ceiling sank. Space itself seemed alive, twisting, folding. The bell vibrated, echoing the combined chorus of the dead and the living, of those who had failed. I tried to call out, but the sound didn't escape. My voice bounced back at me, fractured and distorted. And then the first real terror. The witness appeared. Not human. Not Santa. Not a familiar face. A tall figure, draped in tattered red and white, eyes hollow yet somehow knowing, reaching out as if to touch every memory I'd ever tried to forget. Its presence warped everything around it. Light bent unnaturally. Shadows lunged toward me. The neighbors' faces, frozen in the pews, twisted into accusatory masks. I stumbled backward, tripping over the floor. The bell rang inside me now, vibrating through my bones. My chest heaved with the impossible sound. The witness whispered in my own voice, every syllable a dagger. You came late. You always come late. Panic overtook me. I clawed at the floor, at the walls, at anything solid, but space itself had turned against me. The church groaned and warped, the walls bending inwards, the pews folding into themselves. Shadows clawed at my clothing, my hair, my skin. The floor split, revealing nothingness beneath. And then a surge of memory. The first Christmas Eve when the bell stopped, children screaming, adults praying, The rope pulled too early, warnings ignored. Faces of those I didn't remember flashed before me, accusing and terrified. The witness fed on this, learned, grew stronger. And now it was my turn. I fell to my knees, unable to resist. The figure leaned close, its hollow eyes boring into mine. "You remember now," it said. And I did. Every forgotten, erased, hidden memory. Every failure. Every lie. The floor gave way beneath me. Darkness swallowed me. The bells, now inside and outside me, rang in perfect unison. Faces, shadows, memories, screams, they all collided. I was falling, spinning, trapped in a carousel of terror I could not escape. And then, silence. I woke hours later on the snowy street outside the church. The building stood silent, its doors closed, its bell still. My body ached. Blackened soot smeared my hands. The witness had receded, for now. But I knew it was patient. Eternal. Waiting for the next Christmas Eve when I, or someone else, would fail again. Every shadow, every creak, every distant chime was a reminder. The town had its secrets. The bells had their rules. And the witness never forgave those who remembered. I would never forget. And neither would Cedar Hollow. The snow outside fell harder, smothering the street in white silence. Each flake felt deliberate, a soft punctuation to the chaos growing inside my head. I ran down Cedar Hollow Street, breath clouding in the frozen air, toward the church, the source of it all. The bells had begun again, but this time their chimes didn't echo in the distance. They reverberated inside me, rattling my bones like a hollow drum. The church doors were ajar. Not just slightly. They hung crooked, as if something immense had forced its way through. The wooden frame groaned under its own weight, echoing into the night, and the stained glass windows flickered with shadows that didn't belong. I hesitated at the threshold. My hands shook so violently I thought I'd dropped the flashlight I carried. The air inside smelled of burnt pine and something older. Something metallic. Something that hadn't touched the world for decades. The dim glow of candles lined the aisles, though I didn't see anyone who had lit them. "You shouldn't be here," a voice hissed from the shadows. I froze. It was everywhere and nowhere at once. From the walls, the floor, the ceiling. The voice was my own. My voice. But twisted, fractured, dripping with malice. I have to stop this," I said, though my words sounded distant, like someone else's echo. The floorboards groaned beneath me as if warning me, and the bell's chimes grew louder, vibrating through the air, shaking the dust from the rafters. The choir loft above swayed unnaturally. Shadows stretched along the pews like crawling fingers, stretching toward me, clawing at the floor. From the altar a figure emerged. Not human. Not Santa. Something older, dressed in the tattered red and white of a long-forgotten Christmas past, its eyes hollow and empty, yet filled with all the malice of every forgotten soul in Cedar Hollow. "You remember now," it said, the sound of its voice scraping across the inside of my skull. I couldn't look away. I tried to run. My legs felt like lead, each step dragging me closer to it. The bells rang louder inside my head now, a deafening cacophony that made my knees buckle. Flashbacks hit me, crushing and sudden. The first time the bells had stopped. Children screaming. Adults praying. A rope pulled too early. A warning ignored. Faces I didn't remember, but somehow knew. The witness feeding, learning, growing stronger each year, bound to the rhythm of the bells and the fear of the living. The figure advanced. Its presence warped the space around it. Light bent unnaturally. Time seemed to stretch and fold. I was no longer alone. The neighbors I had seen the night before, hollow-eyed, silent, stood frozen in the pews. Their mouths opened, but no sound came. Their eyes followed the figure as if drawn by an invisible thread. "You lied," it whispered, tilting its head. "The bells were never yours to ring." The floor cracked beneath me. Splinters shot up like tiny daggers. I fell to my knees, grabbing at the wood, but the church itself seemed alive, moving with purpose, folding in on me. The pews twisted, the walls stretched, and the ceiling sank toward the altar. I screamed. My own voice joined the chorus of echoes bouncing through the warped space. Shadows reached, grabbing at my clothes, my hair, my skin. I tried to pull away, but gravity was changing, time folding, and I was trapped in a carousel of memory and terror. Above me, the bells rang again. From inside my head. Every chime carried the voices of the dead, whispering secrets I shouldn't know. Faces, familiar, innocent, were pressed into the glass, staring at me, accusing me. And then, a voice, softer, a single thread of familiarity. Remember. Remember. It wasn't a plea. It was an order. I clawed my way forward, toward the altar. The figure reached out a skeletal hand, not to strike but to show me. To make me see. Its touch burned cold, and suddenly I understood. The bells, the rituals, the lies. All of it had been a trap. Every time someone tried to resist, the witness fed, growing stronger. I tried to flee, but the church had no doors now. No windows. Only walls stretching endlessly, pews folding into themselves, the bells drumming in time with my heartbeat. The neighbors' eyes shifted toward me. Their mouths opened silently, mouthing words I couldn't hear. But I understood. They had failed. I had failed. And the witness would not forgive. The figure leaned close, its face inches from mine. I could feel the cold of centuries in its breath. "You came late," it said. Its voice was my own now. "You always come late." Time fractured. The bells stopped and rang simultaneously, a single unbearable note, and the floor gave way beneath me. I fell. Through darkness. Through snow. Through memories not my own. Faces of children, of adults, screaming, praying, pleading. 100 Christmases passed in the blink of an eye. And then silence. I woke in the street outside the church. The snow was untouched, perfectly white, perfectly still. The church doors were closed. The bells hung silently in the tower. My hands were blackened with soot. My breath came in ragged gasps. But I was alive. For now. The witness had receded, waiting, patient. And I knew, deep down, that it would return. That the bells would call again. That the town, the memories, and I were all part of something endless, inevitable, unstoppable. And when it came next Christmas Eve, it wouldn't be just the bells I'd have to hear. It would be my own voice mocking me, reminding me, waiting for the moment I failed again. I staggered home, snow crunching beneath my feet, shadows clinging to every corner. And in the silence that followed, I knew one truth. Cedar Hollow's Christmas never forgave. It collected. It waited, and it always came for the last witness. I didn't speak to anyone for days. Cedar Hollow seemed normal again. Streetlights glimmered in the soft snow. Smoke rose from chimneys. The distant hum of traffic from the main road reminded me that life still went on somewhere outside this frozen bubble of memory. But inside my head, the bells never stopped. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. Every sound, the hum of the heater, the drip of water from the faucet, the distant footsteps of a neighbor returning from work, triggered that ringing. The air around me carried it. The walls of my house carried it. Even my own heartbeat pulsed in time with their cold, hollow rhythm. I tried to reach out for help. My parents returned 2 days later. They noticed nothing unusual, though they did comment on my pale face and sleepless eyes. I wanted to tell them, wanted someone to validate what I'd experienced, but the words stuck in my throat. How do you explain a voice that sounds exactly like yours whispering from the shadows? How do you explain a bell that rings inside your skull and in the empty air at the same time? How do you explain a town that erases its horrors so well that no one else remembers? I avoided the church. I avoided the street. I avoided mirrors. But avoidance didn't matter. Because the witness waits. Even when unseen, it is there. Patient. Hungry. Patient for the next Christmas Eve when it will test its rules again. And I know we are trapped in its memory, unwilling participants in a ritual that never ends. I began to notice small things first. The faint smell of burnt pine lingering in the kitchen, even when the fireplace was cold. Footsteps echoing in empty hallways, always just behind me. shadows stretching longer than the light should allow, moving independently of their source. Sometimes, when I passed a neighbor's house, I'd see lights in the windows turn on and off in rhythm with the bells, though no one was inside. Then came the dreams. I would wake sweating, hearing the bells inside the walls, in the floors, in my very bones. In the dreams, I was not alone. Children I didn't know played in the snow outside the church. Their faces blurred and indistinct, but I knew, somehow, I had seen them before. I had failed them before. I tried to write everything down to understand. Each time I did, the paper would warp, curling as if scorched by invisible fire. Notes disappeared. Journals shifted pages on their own, leaving only single phrases scrawled in familiar handwriting. You came late. You remember now. Next time you will not leave. By December 23rd, I felt it tightening, a coil around my chest, my throat, my head. I realized that Christmas Eve wasn't a night. It was a test, a trap, and I had failed once, but the witness had allowed me to survive for now. The snow began to fall again. The first flakes were delicate, soft, innocent, but I could hear them landing in rhythm with the bells inside my skull. Each flake a heartbeat. Each heartbeat a reminder. The church steeple was just visible from my bedroom window, a black silhouette against the gray sky. And though I didn't want to look, I couldn't stop. Shadows moved behind the stained glass. A single bell swayed gently, though there was no wind. I knew it had seen me. All of me. I realized something else. It doesn't forgive curiosity, fear, or mistakes. It only waits. Patiently, eternally. By evening, I could no longer distinguish between the bells outside and the ones inside my mind. Their rhythm had merged with my pulse. I tried to breathe normally, tried to eat, tried to speak, but everything was tainted by the memory of that night. When midnight came, I didn't hear the bells stop. I didn't hear the scraping at the walls. I didn't hear the whispers in my own voice. I heard nothing, and that terrified me the most, because silence, I now understood, wasn't safety. Silence was waiting. I stayed awake until dawn, staring at the snow-covered street, watching lights flicker in the distance. I saw no neighbors, no children, no signs of life moving, only shadows stretching across the white landscape, longer than they should be, reaching toward me. The next Christmas Eve, I will hear the bells again. And they will come for me. Not because I did anything wrong. Not because I deserved it. But because the witness demands it. It needs me to remember, to fail, to survive, and then to wait for the next inevitable test. I am broken now. Not dead, but hollowed. The town is gone from maps. Cedar Hollow may never exist on anyone else's memory. But I remember everything. Every scream, every shadow, every bell. Every promise I failed to keep. I've tried to leave. I've tried to run. But the bells follow. They hide in every rhythm of life. The hum of engines, the drip of water, the ticking of clocks. And in the moments of quiet, when I think I am alone, they ring. Sometimes I hear the child's voice again. Soft, distant, familiar. You promised you'd remember. And I do. I will always remember. Because the next Christmas Eve will come. And the witness will be waiting. And I will not escape. The street outside my window is empty. The snow is untouched. The air is silent. But the bells are inside me now. And they always will be.